Dissidia Final Fantasy might be my favorite Final Fantasy spin-off. There's a reason that there's a cult following for Duodecim, and it truly is unfortunate that that game is still trapped to PSP. It was why I was so excited when Square Enix had announced Dissidia NT. Finally, a Dissidia game that I would be able to play on a home console, and with brand new HD graphics. Unfortunately, Dissidia NT was a massive failure. From the 3v3 that no one wanted, to a change in overall gameplay feel that made it less satisfying than Duodecim, the lack of a proper story mode, and the list just goes on and on and on. Couple this with the fact that highly beloved mobile game Opera Omnia was also shut down, my assumption was that the Dissidia series was completely finished. That is, until Square Enix announced a brand new Dissidia game was coming to iOS and Android. That game was Dissidia Duellum, and yes, it is pronounced Duellum apparently, and not Duellum. This game received an incredible amount of backlash on its announcement, with many fans screaming, "Square, all you had to do was remaster Duodecim," as the impression that most fans had was, this is yet another Dissidia game that isn't the playstyle that we're looking for. It's also worth noting here that this game is built off of another game called Compass, a Japan exclusive PvP game that looks and plays exactly like Dissidia Duellum. As you can see, even the HP bars and the way the abilities are lined up at the bottom is the exact way that Duellum is. This isn't just Square Enix copying someone else's design, as it's actually the same developer who worked on both. The developer is NHN PlayArt, so the similarities between the two make sense. Compass has been running in Japan for 9 years now, so clearly it's been a fairly successful game. So it's very clear that Square Enix's idea here is to take a very successful Japan-only game, put some Final Fantasy characters on it, and then release it globally. Make of that what you will. However, I was able to play the closed beta test recently. Now normally, I am an iOS user. However, this beta was Android only. This being said, I managed to obtain a refurbished Galaxy S22 to play this on. And unfortunately, I had to lose a ton of sleep because the beta test was only available between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m. in my time zone. This is likely because this window is noon to 6 p.m. in Japan time, and the team likely wanted to monitor the game in real time while they were working. But despite all of that inconvenience, I am utterly shocked to tell you that this game is actually really fun. For starters, the presentation is excellent. I adore the visual style of this game. All of your favorite Final Fantasy characters look amazing here, and I love them wearing modern Japanese fashion. In the previews, I wasn't the biggest fan of the music, but once you get the vibe that they're going for and hear the music against the gameplay, it actually really does fit, and I began to really enjoy the soundtrack. And I would go as far as saying it's the best Dissidia OST that they've ever done. And all the cutscenes feature full Japanese voice acting, although unfortunately it's been confirmed that there won't be any English audio. Essentially, this is a PvPvE game, where you have a party of 3 Final Fantasy characters versus another party of 3. There are 4 total roles in combat: melee, agile, support, and ranged. This means that you have to forego one of these roles when assembling your team. However, you're not competing for the most number of kills, you're competing to be the first person to defeat the boss, with the bosses being classic Final Fantasy enemies like Malboro and Behemoth. However, the biggest departure in this game from the normal Dissidia formula is that Bravery doesn't determine how much HP damage you'll do in this game. So it's not like previous Dissidias where you have brave attacks and HP attacks. Rather, in order to defeat the boss, you need to be able to burst. And in order to be able to burst, you need the classic 9,999 brave. Otherwise, you'll be unable to attack the boss at all. In order to get brave points, you need to either purify crystals, which involves defeating the surrounding enemies, or other players. While purifying crystals is the fastest way to build brave, you may also want to attack enemy players if you think that they're going to burst before you will. One of my favorite mechanics in this game is that you're rewarded for bursting at the same time as your teammates. Bursting at the same time will allow you to get increased boss damage, rewarding players for their synchronicity and teamwork. It is indeed always better to burst with your bros. I decided to main Lightning of all the default options that the game gives you. She has the agile role, and I use her to farm brave crystals. crystals. You do have to use a digital analog stick in order to move. Now, movement works great as long as you are moving forward. You can also flick down in order to reverse the camera, but unfortunately, you will spend a decent amount of time fighting the camera. This can be especially bad in PvP encounters. Your basic attack is interesting in this game because you have this area of effect in front of you, and any enemy that's in it, be it a monster or a player from another team, will be locked onto for your character's attacks. You then tap the digital analog stick in order to perform your basic combo. For me, this was unfortunate sometimes because it would lock onto things that I didn't want to. For example, maybe I didn't want to attack the person that was standing in the crystal, I just wanted to attack the monster so I could try to beat them in order to purify the crystal. With the digital analog stick, you're also able to do a press and hold ability, and in Lightning's case, this is her dash move, which allows her to do a spin attack at the end, a position in the center of a crystal. This allows you to wipe out enemies really fast. If all of this sounds clunky to control, it kind of is. You'll find yourself fighting against the controls, fighting against movement, fighting against the camera, fighting against the enemies, quite a lot, but when it all works, it does feel pretty good. Unfortunately, it wasn't until the last day of the beta that I finally took Blitz's advice, and that is to swap over to the alternative movement option. This separates the analog stick and your attack button from each other. This is a little tricky to do with Lightning as you have to hold the right attack button and then steer with your left thumb on the stick, but it is significantly better than the default control scheme, and I highly recommend that everyone swap over to this one. You have 5 abilities you get to carry into battle, each one having its own cooldown time. These abilities range from things like Kira to your damage dealing special abilities or even character specific abilities. Abilities are simultaneously the coolest and lamest part of this game. This is indeed an RPG, and it does allow you to customize your character's loadouts. These abilities are also tied to your character's stats, allowing you to boost their stats even further by leveling the abilities up. Theoretically, this is a cool mechanic that makes it feel like a Final Fantasy game and an RPG. The problem is that abilities are tied to the gacha system, and that means exactly what you think it means. This game has an uphill struggle to beat the pay-to-win allegations. There are absolutely broken abilities in this game, such as Minwu Teleport, an ability that lets you warp to any crystal of your choosing. The strongest abilities for your character are also locked behind the gacha paywall, meaning you have to keep doing pulls in order to get your favorite character's full kit. And believe me, this was bad enough in the closed beta where all the pools were free and no money was taken as nobody could whale. But once whales do enter the game, they will be able to spin their way to be absolutely overpowered and have the best abilities in the game. And this by far is the game's biggest fault, because just based on this alone, it seems like it will be impractical for a free user to win at higher levels. It seems really backwards when there are so many other competitive games that have figured this out by now and monetize in non-competitive ways, mostly being cosmetics. And for anyone looking for a balanced, skill-based competitive experience, this threatens to ruin the entire game for them. The gacha grind also impacts this game negatively in other ways too. Like many other gacha games, this one also has an auto battle. However, auto battle is a bit different here. This is a PvP game where you play against other people, and so by using auto battle, yes, you are able to automate your competitive play, and you can use it in ranked battles. It's clearly there so you can farm rewards without having to engage with the game. That's fine in other gachas, but not in a supposed skill-based PvP game. Whether the AI is dumb or smart, this creates a problem either way, because if it's dumb, then why would anyone use it? But if it's smart, then why wouldn't everyone use it? I've spoke to some of my fellow beta testers who were able to get really good gacha pulls, and as a result had amazing kits. And with those abilities sufficiently upgraded, not only were they able to win matches, but they even won MVP in many of their matches. Now, maybe this means the people they were playing against just sucked, but the reality is, this shouldn't be a thing happening at all. My biggest fear is that later on in the game's life cycle, you'll just have auto-battling whales against auto-battling whales with the best abilities. And if you're a real player who is actually playing the game, you'll have no real incentive to continue. And we also have to address that this is not the first Dissidia mobile game. Opera Omnia featured much more generous game design, primarily featuring a weapons gacha and making all of its characters available for free. However, Opera Omnia shut down, not because it didn't have a very dedicated fanbase playing and loving it. It definitely did. However, to Square Enix, it simply didn't bring in enough profit and wasn't financially viable anymore. It's then really difficult to not see Dissidia Duellum as a swing back in the other direction, an attempt to make more money by heavily monetizing the game and its mechanics in ways that are parasitic to the design and its overall enjoyment. And let's just be honest here, Square Enix has shut down so many of its mobile games that it's really hard to fault fans for having a weakened sense of confidence in this title, as Square Enix can always pull the plug. So there's a lot of negative here, but would you believe me if I said I really enjoyed it? I've been looking for a good PvP experience from FF for a while now. 14 sort of has it with Crystalline Conflict. Of course, everyone has to have an active FF14 subscription in order to play, but I wanted something more like Dissidia Duellum is offering, and I think I got exactly that. Being able to party up with Blitz and other friends, it truly was a really fun experience. And the game, when it's working and you don't have people that simply have God's luck on their side, the game is an absolute blast to play. I find myself thinking about it when I'm not playing it, just sitting around waiting for the beta's window to open so I can play even more of it. It is truly an addictive game, and that's also what frustrates me, because Square Enix's current monetization strategy is going to ruin what I find so enjoyable about this game, and it's already showing its signs even in this closed beta test. And to be clear, I do want this game to succeed. I want Square Enix to take the feedback that the community has given, that me and other content creators are giving, and make adjustments so that the game does end up thriving and we have this great mobile Dissidia that we can play. Though I know most fans wish this game could have come to PC and consoles, it really is built for mobile from the ground up. With the mobile first portrait aspect ratio, players playing in landscape would be at a disadvantage unless they enabled landscape for the mobile version, and everyone would have to switch over because if you're in portrait, you are just at a disadvantage, period. The controls are built for mobile, and honestly, even the basic way that you attack is built for mobile. This is all made to work on a touchscreen, even if it is clunky. That being said, playing this game, you could definitely see there was a way to have made this work on controller, and it is frustrating that this is not a game on console and PC because it would have rocked. It would have also allowed them to do things like wall running and other types of things that Dissidia fans are used to. You'd also be able to jump and have air tech, which unfortunately the mobile controls simply won't allow for. You would be able to do things like block. The potential for this game as a full-priced video game would have been absolutely awesome. Of course, all this being said, this game is a Final Fantasy game, and one of the high points of the Dissidia series is seeing how other characters interact with each other. Of course, there is a story in this game, one that starts off by immediately Final Fantasy VII baiting, which leads to Cloud pursuing Sephiroth. Although as it is a closed beta, many of the story scenes are likely missing, and so we can't exactly tell everything that's going on. That being said, cutscenes are something you unlock by completing enough battles in a way that reminded me of Dissidia NT's narrative structure, something I know you guys are thrilled to hear. These scenes, at least in the closed beta test, are really fun slice of life scenes with the characters hanging out in modern day real world Tokyo. I think these scenes are really fun and ultimately well done. They are also, again, fully voice acted in Japanese, which is a very nice touch.
舞台の主役はファンの気持ちをありがたく受け止めないとな。てなわけでちょっとファンさせてくるわ。おい、調子に。やあやあ、お嬢さんたち。やっと本物の時間。一緒に写真撮っていいですか？え？おー、いいよいいよ、喜んで。どうする？俺真ん中？あー、真ん中入る？あ、じゃあこんな感じで。はい、ありがとね。 名前まで
To supplement these scenes, they also have fine messages. And yes, this is meant to be a pun on the popular Japanese messaging app Line. These are pretty silly, but I feel like people will actually like them. Imagine all of your favorite Final Fantasy characters in a group chat on Messenger or Discord. That's essentially what this is, and it is a pretty cool concept, and something I think that Final Fantasy fans will like and parody in their own time. Overall, Dissidia Duellum surprised me with how much of a fun, engaging video game that it can be. It is just extremely unfortunate that I think the monetization is going to be parasitic toward the game and actively harm its longevity. There is a caveat here, however. The game this is based on, Compass, has been running for 9 years, and though it's Japan only, I'm left to assume that its monetization structure is similar to that of Dissidia Duellum's. So it clearly has not stopped the success of that game. And with the same people handling this game, we're left to assume that it will probably be okay. At the very least, the Japanese audience doesn't mind it. However, that audience is also a lot more pro-gacha than we are here in the West. So if NHN PlayArt has figured it out with that game, certainly it won't be as big of a problem for Dissidia Duellum. The only question is if Final Fantasy fans will gravitate toward it and enjoy it all the same. If you participated in this beta, please leave me a comment below letting me know your thoughts and impressions, what you loved and what your concerns are, and if you didn't participate in this beta, will you give the final release of Dissidia Duellum a fair shot? And I'll see you all in the next video.